What up, D-League? Welcome back, welcome back. When I said last week that we should see the standings shake out a little bit, what I meant to say was that we'd see about 7 people tied for 4th. Luckily, I did really good in picks last week, so we're going to take a look and see how I did there right after a word from our sponsor.
It may sound absurd, but don't be naive. Even heroes have the right to bleed. I may be disturbed, but won't you concede? Even heroes have the right to dream, and it's not easy to be me.
Pretty hot 2 and 3 from last week. Boo! Nate got back to his losing ways though. Jamie is pretty much an unreliable cunt. And clearly I can't be trusted. Outside of that though, it was a pretty stellar week. This week Jamie really stepped it up in the polls. And now back again is...
I'm a man.
Let's take a look now at what dickhead polls our league champ has put together for us. First one we'll take a look at is Sean's wide receiver poll. Clearly he should have added Dallas Clark to this since he scored less than a point. Jacoby Jones made a nice play for this at 1.9 points last week, but the real answer was Eric Decker, who scored less than Danny Amendola on IR. Let's take a look at our next poll. This one's about who should be the winner of the week. What's nice to see is that Adam finally won something. Unfortunately, it was a vote calling him out for tanking this year. He learned pretty much everything he knows from James. The next poll he did was about who was going to be the loser of the week, and basically it ended up being a tie between him and Sean. I'm going to break that tie here real quick. The next poll was on who got the better end of a trash trade that Jamie did. No, not the one for Jackie Battle, which I still think Dave did so Jamie could prove to me that somebody was stupid enough to give him a free pick for a guy who was about to be cut. Nope, the trade we're talking about is the reason why Jamie wanted that free 3rd round pick. He gave a 3rd rounder to Adam for an independent defensive player. But in the end, I think Colin's vote was probably the most accurate. Last one was a vote weighing in on the blockbuster trade we had last week. I'll cover my thoughts on this trade in the next section. In the interest of time, I'm not going to review all of Jamie's trash trades because it's tough to keep up with all of them. Let's get to the blockbuster. Colin sent Dave, Cam Newton, and Reggie Bush for Julio Jones, Josh Freeman, and his 1st rounder. It's tough to pick a side on this one. The only thing I feel for certain is that Colin traded Cam too early here. The hype machine is out of control right now in Cam Newton. Dave did the right thing by getting in on it now, though. If Dave truly thinks that Cam Newton is the truth, he had to move on him now. Colin loves names, and this one, Julio Jones, is the one he fell in love with. Freeman and the 1st rounder, those were just things to make him feel better about doing the trade. There's no doubt that Dave's taking a risk by moving on Cam Newton like this. Is he top 3 quarterback good? Is he Vic good? It's hard to say. His output potential is pretty crazy right now, though. I think Dave did the right thing. I think he got the right end of it. And I know James is still kicking himself for not getting Cam in the draft. And if Dave hadn't moved on him and he blew up, Dave would be kicking himself too. Dave has too much future stock to really miss anything that he gave up for this trade. And Julio Jones is about 3 years away from being a real force unless a trade happens. 3 years from now, if Cam Newton keeps at this pace, he could be completely out of control. I don't hate Colin for making this trade, don't get me wrong. I think he should have waited though, for sure. Dave does have a special knack for keeping Colin relevant via trades. Basically winning the Michael Vick lotto, and Dave blowing life back into his team by trading him to Deshaun Jackson. If Julio Jones turns out to be the next Deshaun Jackson, it's pretty much going to be all on Dave's shoulders on why everybody has to deal with Colin. As much as I like to hate on Colin, and he does do a lot of stupid shit, he's managed to take a shitty team and not only make it relevant, but make it a contender. The truth of it is that he's out GMing a lot of people that think they know a lot more than he does, or that they think they're rebuilding. And for that I give Colin his props. Let's take a look now at our Rapist of the Week. Rapist of the Week this week is Trav. As much as I wanted to give it to Dave, Trav does deserve this for the ironic twist of fate that happened last week. Not only did Trav slay the dragon, he did it with a crappy QB that he traded for against the good QB that he gave away. If every week went like last week, though, Travis would be the smartest motherfucker on the planet. I'll give Trav and his team credit though. I sure as hell didn't think they had it in them to beat Jamie last week. It might be a bit early in the fantasy season for a must-win, but if there was ever one this early in the season, I think that game was a must-win for Travis. He's now tied for 4th just like the rest of us. He even moved a notch ahead of me, and a win this week could skyrocket him right back into contention. Let's take a look now at the flip side of the coin.
Bitch, I'm about to ball this.
I have an IQ of 48 and am what some people call mentally retarded.
He was retarded.
I'm a driver, I'm a winner. Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
Only reason I'm crying is because of the adrenaline.
Man, there's so many good choices for Biggest Loser of the Week. My performance was worthy, that's for sure. Jamie's team did the unthinkable and lost to Travis and basically shit the bed. But there was one person who put in an extra special effort. He started one of the worst running back combinations in league history. Together they combined for barely over 5 points. He had 2 wide receivers and a tight end who also barely combined for over 5 points. Only 3 people on his entire team went double digits. One of those was a kicker. 7 days prior to kickoff, Sean was already running towards that 2-3 record with wide open arms. Luckily, Sean's really easy to trade with, so he should be improving that team probably the day after never. Let's take a look now at our previews. First up, we have Mind Grapes taking on Seppuku. Well, if it wasn't for the fact that Nate and Sean played this week, we'd probably be talking about the Toilet Bowl matchup of the week. This game was so bad that I had to pick up a highly questionable running back and start him off the wire, and Adam is still barely projected to beat me. With Rivers on the bye, I've got to put in Eli to take on Matt Ryan. Even though Matt Ryan's not projected to have the advantage here, I think he probably will because Eli is pretty much a pick machine. But luckily with Adam's favorite team being the Giants, I'm going to make his weekend real bittersweet every time he throws one of those picks. Since Fitz and Jackson sitting down, I'm back to starting a wide receiver that got blanked last week. Probably will get blanked again this week. The other 2 wide receivers are both coming back from injury. And on the other side of the fence, Adam's starting the high-power trio of Jordy Nelson, Victor Cruz, and James Jones. I guess I have the advantage, but it sure as shit doesn't feel like it. And then we got McCoy and my bye-week Hail Mary and Danny Woodhead. They take on MJD and Sproles. Clearly Adam has me in this area. And then you got Witten versus Gresham, which really isn't even a fair fight. Every bone in my body says I should pick Adam to win here, but my hope is that I can beat a rebuilding team and go and get that win. Dave's going to trot out his newly acquired pony this week. Next up we have Rainbow Warriors taking on Blackbeard's Delight, against the guy who slapped Jamie right in the face last week. Every dog has his day, and Big Ben had his last week, but I don't think he can do it again against Cam. Newton only needs a small window to pull ahead of Big Ben here. Dave's also busting out his first-round draft pick in Little to accompany Nix and White. They're going to take on Wallace, Holmes, and Bolden. All these wide receivers actually have good matchups, but I think White and Nix will be able to push through and give Dave the advantage here. I do think that Little's going to hold him back just a little bit here, though. See what I did there. Turner and Bradshaw are going to go toe-to-toe with last week's star Javid Best and James Starks. Dave keeps his edge here and doesn't give it up the rest of the way. In the end, Dave should have this. But Dave's been underperforming all year, and Travis did just slay a dragon. So it could very much end up being closer than it looks on paper. But hey Dave, don't bother texting Travis during the game. He's only going to respond back if he wins. Alright, next up we have multiple scoregasms taking on Mavericks. We are about to see an unstoppable force collide with an immovable object. Number 1 takes on number 2 this week in our marquee matchup of the week. Yahoo has the scoring projection only .06 difference between these two teams. Jamie's bringing Drew Brees this week after an underwhelming performance last week, although he still outscored Stafford last week. Andre Johnson sidelined with injury, and Fitz is on a bye. Jamie's going to roll with Mike Williams over Brandon Marshall this week. He's going to accompany Jennings and Macklin. They'll be taking on Megatron, a gimpy Dez, and Jabbar Gaffney. Jamie's depth is definitely going to prevail in this situation. And Jamie's going against the cardinal rule of start your starters. This week he's going to put in Ryan Terrain over Arian Foster. Personally, I think this is a bad call. I speak from experience. On the other side, he'll be rolling with AP, and they'll be taking on Forte and Hillis. Now, personally, I like AP more than I like Forte and Hillis together. But, combined, everything said and done, I think Terrain holds him back enough to actually give Dan a little bit of an edge here. I just think Shenanigans is going to end up screwing him somehow. Finley's obviously a beast at the tight end spot. All in all, I think this is a perfect storm for Jamie to upset Dan and take the win here. It should actually be a pretty good matchup. It's going to end up being very close, I think. Alright, next up we have Team Disenfranchised taking on Men of Troy. Two of the smartest motherfuckers of all time scoring off this week. Cupcake Fucker's going to try and take the boy who loves turtles down off his high horse. To do so, he's going to trot out Romo and try and keep up with Vic. But he's going to have a tough time keeping up once he gets to wide receiver. He's bringing Welker, Santana Moss, and Emmanuel Sanders to take on Djax, Harvin, and Steve Smith. Obviously, Colin has the edge here. The unfortunate truth, though, is if Brady so chooses, Wes Welker could outscore all of them. On the running back front, Gore and Benson are going to be taking on Run DMC and Felix. I think James gets the edge here, though, because Benson could have a big day in Indy. At tight end, I was unaware that Hernandez was even back, but he's going to be taking on Owen Daniels this week. He's actually had a few pretty good games this year. Colin continues to make his bid for the playoff run, and I think Cupcake Fucker's luck runs out this week. And last up, we have Rare Treats taking on KC Reunited. Welcome to our Toilet Bowl matchup of the week. We have number 8 taking on number 10. Aaron Rodgers is currently slated to score 1/3 of Nate's points this week. He'll be going up against Brady. Both of these quarterbacks have the ability to will their team to victory. Unfortunately for Nate, though, he's going to need a lot more will. He's starting 3 random waiver wire wonders this week against Stevie Johnson, AJ Green, and Jacoby Jones. Sean clearly has this wide receiver area under wraps. Sean actually has real running backs to start this week. He has Ernest Graham and Ray Rice taking on Sean Green and Fred Jackson. I think that edge is actually going to be pretty solid for Sean. Normally I don't even bring up kickers, but Janikowski, 3 50-yarders last week? Are you fucking kidding me? It should have been 4 even. That's crazy. Just crazy. Without question though, if Sean loses, he should just borrow Adam's sword and just fall on that bitch.
Wrap it up. Wrap that shit up, B.
Well, kids, that's going to wrap it up for us this week. Tune in next week where if I don't win, I'll probably just make you watch me take shots for the entire episode until I get alcohol poisoning.